Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LIL Virtual Student Club Fair. Here, you're going to be making connections, hopefully partnerships, and doing a little bit of networking. Today, you're going to see a lot of projects that ultimately come down to sets of crucial choices. So, what are you good at? What do you have time to actually do? And what actually interests you? So, what happens when you can't decide where you want to focus your education or your efforts? Don't worry, you're not alone. It may be the case that you are undecided, but you can be undecided and proud as well. So, today we're going to talk about how to build a profile that fits you and that's impressive, but also stay curious. So, what does undecided really mean? It means undeclared, open. You hear it referred to in all sorts of ways. What it means when it comes down to it for our purposes is that you haven't officially applied to a school and told them what you're majoring in. So maybe you're not at the application period yet, or maybe you have applied and you just you don't know what to say. So you may not know whether it's because you haven't dared to ask or because you haven't been allowed to yet as well. So you may be undecided for reasons that we will see coming up. So who actually is undecided? So the proportion of entering first-time, full-time college students in the US who choose undecided as their intended college major increased from 1.7% in 1966 to 8.9% in 2015. So this is from an older paper. I'm going to guess it's much higher now, though, we never know. Have to rely on the data. 75% of college students change their major at least once. This was the case around the same time as the first statistic. So that's not a small amount, right? If we are going to assume that it's continuing to increase, because we're all lucky enough to have more options than our parents did as far as, delaying and making choices, at least on the whole. We also have to consider who can't be undecided, right? It would be silly to say that, oh, it doesn't matter what you want to do. It's totally fine. Well, sometimes people tell you you have to decide on your major for a good reason. So some students, maybe you, are interested in programs that require auditions or prereqs. So computer science is one of these, engineering, if you play an instrument or if you're a studio artist. Generally, college is not the level that you start these things, right? It would be great if we could, and some places, you can. But when we're aiming for those big schools, they want you to have a background in it and they want you to be committed to it. So they will ask you to sometimes do an audition. So which schools are going to make you to decide? The average school is going to make some students decide on a major or even just a school within the university, and others won't. So a lot of universities have separate schools when we're talking about the big state universities or, the liberal arts colleges that have been around for a long time and expanded. They may have a school of business, a school of public affairs, school of dance, school of engineering. Often, but not always, these schools will direct admit into that school. So you're not applying to the whole university, you're applying to get in to just that school. That may make things harder and easier. I'm sure all of you, especially if there are any computer science majors out there, you've heard about how hard it is to apply directly into computer science, right? So they're like, you either have to try and get in once you're there, or, you know, really wow them so that you can get into that direct admit if that's the only way that you can proceed. And then universities with unique majors. So there are unique majors at a lot of schools. So I'm thinking of things like at Penn, they have the management and technology program. So you both get an engineering degree and a degree from Wharton. So that basically they have your whole 4 years planned out for you, right? So in that case, they're like, you need to know so we can start day one giving you those really specific classes. Same thing with Cornell School of Human Ecology. So you may have something like in Cornell's case where you have a psychology major inside of the School of Human Ecology. So it's more interdisciplinary focus, and then a normal psychology or a traditional program in the School of Arts and Sciences or the equivalent. Which places won't make you decide? Well, there are lists that you can find online all over that talk about open curriculum schools. These are schools where you may have to take one, maybe two required courses, and they tend to be not like gen ed courses. It's like you have to take a course about society, or you have to take a writing course. Those schools are considered open curriculum schools because for the most part, you can take either whatever classes that you want and figure out what major that is, or with the electives that you have outside of your major, you're not trying to also stuff gen ed requirements into it. You're just only studying what you want to study for the most part. So Amherst, Brown, and NYU Gallatin. So if anybody's not heard of Gallatin specifically, it's their school of individualized study. So it's all sort of like, you know, I know exactly what I want to do and there's not a major for it. There are even a few schools where you can still major in general liberal arts, humanities, or general sciences, which at least gives you some flexibility. You'll still have, you know, a good amount of your classes taken up, especially, you know, because you're not just learning one science or one liberal art, right? You're learning a lot of them, but you will naturally get to hop around. It's not like high school is the end of you trying new things. So when do you have to decide? A lot of times you have to know before applying. Like I brought up before, there may be an application that's specific to a school or a major. Those of you who are seniors and juniors are keenly aware of those supplemental essays, those school-specific essays, right? So all of that normally changes when you are undecided versus decided. Sometimes you kind of have to try and decide something, right? So most of the time you have to know by the end of freshman year, especially for STEM, what your major is going to be, or at the end of sophomore year, if you are more on the humanities side. So again, it's totally different per school, but in general, you normally get a little bit more time to declare in humanities because for each thing, there's less like mandatory intro courses that you have to take early to understand everything else. In the sciences, like you guys already know, it's a lot of prerequisites required. It all depends on the number of credits that you have to take to qualify for your major. So if you're split in what you want to do, but it overlaps nicely with your major, you may get to do both. And you may even get to declare two majors. So this is now a moment of truth. Think about the way that you work. You can probably ask your parents too. They'll be really good at helping you spot this. You are most likely either a generalist or a specialist. So a generalist is someone whose skills, interests, or habits are varied or unspecialized. And a specialist is a person who has a lot of training, knowledge, or skill in a particular area. Notice, they both have skill in them. If you are a generalist, if you like trying different things, it doesn't mean that you don't get good at them. It just means that you might not be happy being the world's best something, as opposed to a pretty good bunch of other things. And that has a lot to do with your personality, how you were raised, what your school was like. There are lots of ways that you can accidentally or on purpose find yourself as a generalist or a specialist, often called like dabblers or committers. So if you've had to tell people, oh, I'm a dabbler, I like to hop between things, that's okay. We're going to clear up that as like a bad thing right now. It is not. A generalist is not somebody who's lazy, distracted, or unmotivated. That's just a lazy, distracted, or unmotivated person. Being a generalist means that you have varied interests and skills, not that you can't commit to one. So get that out of your head. And being a specialist doesn't mean that you aren't curious or creative. Just because, I'm sure some of you have a sibling where you're like, I cannot believe all he likes is math and all he does is math and he does nothing else. All he cares about is math. Well, I mean, there's a lot of room to be curious and creative about math and the interdisciplinary applications. Being really, really good at one thing doesn't mean that you lack the ability to go back and forth. So neither a generalist nor a specialist is better than the other. This is important. It is okay to be either. Generalists tend to make excellent entrepreneurs, lawyers, managers, teachers, consultants, journalists, writers. These are all people who have to understand people very generally and broadly, and they have to be good readers. They have to be good writers. So this is what I mean by skills. As a generalist, you do have skills. You typically have to be good with people. You typically have to be really good with communication, right? Especially because you're not stuck in the jargon of one field, right? You have to learn how to communicate and how to adapt. Specialists are often the artists, athletes, doctors, engineers, tradespeople. So like there are all kinds of levels of income and seriousness amongst either group. So being a generalist, if you've decided what you wanted to do a bunch of times and you can't land on it, it's okay, as long as when you hopped into each thing, you really gave it your all and you showed that you learned from it and you built from it when you move on to your next thing. We need both. Some of you may be thinking, well, like, why doesn't everybody know what they want to do, right? Especially if that's clear for you, you've got to be like, how could you not know, right? But a lot of people don't know. They might be really good at more than one thing. They have decision paralysis. You might be torn between being in a passion of yours or a career suggested by other people. You might like the what or the why in a field, but not enjoy the how, where, or when. So you may like the subject, but you might not actually like what it takes to do a job in that field, or at least the most common one. Generalists, find your narrative. Focus on what connects your separate interests. Is there an overlap? Do you take a unique approach to things? So is there something about you and the way that you try things, and that's sort of your gift? And learn how to make yourself useful. Find opportunities where having a really big picture view or having an open mind can actually make things better. And then, of course, respect your specialists. Specialists, understand that you're well-rounded, and you need to be. Don't get tunnel vision. Look for interdisciplinary approaches wherever you can. Change up the beneficiaries of your project. That makes it community service or entrepreneurship rather than like just plain science, right? Can you help people in need or governments? And who needs access to expertise? It could be in your community. So that can be very grounded and people-centric too. Sometimes life decides for you. Sometimes you get an unexpected offer, job, money, trip, something like that. You may have an aging parent, a mental illness, or a physical injury. Your visa may not be set. You might get married, divorced, have a kid, or just have a really big personal epiphany where you realize, like, oh my gosh, I think I just found what I was meant to do, and I found it out way too late. That is okay. Still go with it, try your best. All that we can do is, whether specialist or generalist, exactly where we want to be or not quite sure, is give it your all and try your best to make it clear that whatever you do, you're going to do it well. It's okay if you aren't sure what you want to study or do for a career. There are great opportunities for hardworking students, no matter what they focus in. And for the most part, you can always change your mind later, and you probably will. So just enjoy learning and making connections. That's what Club Fair is all about.